Hey, good evening, everybody. It's like a show before a show. Good evening. Hope you all doing well out there. Today, we're going to be talking about the film industry. We're going to be having George and I talk a lot about stuff like this, and usually after a show that we've done, or before a show, or in the middle of the show, or whatever. But we actually have a lot to offer in this area because we're passionate about films and art, and we want to share those views with you. And we want to thank you for being here today. So just hang tight. We'll be right back. All righty. Well, thank you very much for listening to our little jam there and dancing. Hopefully, you guys were doing the hokey pokey and turning yourselves around. So, George, we're going to first do some work. We have to kind of give a sponsor some love, and then we're going to do a tribute to a couple of great actors. And let's start with our sponsors.
Okie doke. So, Counterparts show. It is brought to you by Wellness Resources, a family-owned and operated nutritional supplement company providing the highest quality, clinically formulated supplements since 1985. Find out why Wellness Resources is the top choice of health-conscious individuals around the world. Go to myvitaminresource.com, and if you enter the promo code Counterparts, you will get free shipping on any size order.
Cool. Thank you. We had a graphic that we would show here, and it's gone now. So
That's weird.
the magic of live television.
Technology.
No, I don't know. I think I might have accidentally deleted it, but anyway, I apologize for that. But yes, thank you, George. All right, so we lost two greats recently. Want to talk a little bit and just give a quick tribute to them and to their work. First, we're gonna talk about this gentleman, David Warner, who we actually talked about on our show when we started this whole Counterparts show.
Yep.
We started, I don't know if anybody's been around, with us since the beginning, but
Yeah.
we started really focusing a lot on Star Trek and kind of comparing Star Trek to life. And that was sort of like the start of, as my voice changes, that was the start of our show, Counterparts. And he was in one of the best episodes, if not the best episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And George, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's one of my favorite, probably my top three favorites of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and basically just the quick premise of the show of that episode is that he plays a Cardassian who captures Jean-Luc Picard and tortures him, and it's amazing because you really the interplay between both actors is just so amazing because they're both trained Shakespearean actors, and you find yourself so immersed in the scene where he's torturing him, and he's got I think it's four lights behind him, and he's trying to get Jean-Luc Picard to admit that he's seeing five lights and not four lights, and basically trying to bend him to his will, break him basically, and Jean-Luc refuses to do so. Yeah. And it is just it was one of the pivotal shows what I watched as far as Next Generation, where I really fell in love with the actor David Warner. I mean, I'd seen him. He's also been in Star Trek and other. He played a Klingon, and he played a Federation citizen in some of the other movies. Yeah, but he and he's played many characters in his career. But that was one of the first places where I just fell in love with him as an actor because he was so convincing.
Yeah.
And so great. So he was absolutely fantastic.
So definitely safe travels, David Warner, and we will appreciate your work moving forward. And my one of my favorite films of all time, as you know, and I've talked about it here. I did a whole show on it actually
Yeah.
back in the days. But it's Goodfellas. It's
Yeah.
one of the films that I've always felt that was shot with such. It was so smooth. It was sort of like watching. It's watching a film that there isn't a part that you fast forward on.
Right.
Sometimes you see a film that you really like, a lot of scenes, but you fast forward during some parts or whatever. But it's one of those films that to me is like the perfect film, and I just love that film. So I just want to actually quickly acknowledge a few people that came on here, and then we're gonna. But this is Jabari Melan Khan. Thank you. He says, "Yo." And
What's up, Jabari?
what's up? And here's Rick, who says a new formula to make movies, taking the Hollywood politics out of movie making and changes. Yep, I agree, Rick. Thank you very much for your comment. So, Goodfellas, an incredible film, an incredible cast, an incredible director, an incredible script from an incredible book. And we're gonna just say goodbye to Paul Servino, who passed away yesterday, actually. And one of these, he, man, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen these scenes with him. I don't know if you're familiar with the film, if you've
Yeah.
seen it, but there's the scene when Henry Hill comes to him after he's kind of like fell out. He knows he's on drugs. Paul, he knows he's on drugs. He knows and he just hands him like $3,000 or something.
Right.
And his eyes, man, like, you're done. I'm done with you. You're dead to me.
Right.
I treated you like a son, and this is what you did to me, and was just so incredible. And his whole performance in that film was great. And of course, he's an accomplished actor who's done tremendous work throughout the. And George, you said you had
Well, yeah, just really quick. My mom actually was able got a chance to meet him. My mom and stepdad. This was years ago. This had to be probably over 20 years ago. They were at and I don't remember. There was some gathering that they were at, and there was two actors there. He was one of them, and Jack Scalia, who's another actor, was there as well. They got to hang out. But my mom really always liked him as well, and she got to meet him at one point, and she said he was the nicest guy.
yeah,
The
that's what I've heard
sweetest.
also.
I've heard that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
the sweetest guy. I think she got a picture with him, and I think they even sat at a table and they told jokes, and she said he was fantastic. So and you love to hear that, especially with these accomplished actors who you admire so much, that at the same time on the outside they're just a sweet
Legends.
person. Yeah, absolutely.
When you hit legendary status,
Yeah.
you think maybe there's a change in the personality, or there's a divaness,
Right.
whatever the male divaness is.
Right.
But it's not. It's when you hear stories like that, and I've heard a lot of stories of some of these legends, and they're just really great people.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Paul was definitely one of them. So safe travels, sir. Thank you for all your work, and thank you to everyone for watching his work as well. It was fantastic. So, and today we're going to be talking about films. We're going to be talking about the film industry, and we're going to be diving into, obviously, a lot of this is going to be, some of it will be facts because we're just going to pull stuff off the internet, stuff that we've researched, and then everybody can just go research on their own. And then there's going to be stuff that's, of course, our opinion, right? Our views. This is a show for entertainment. I don't know why I had to say it like that. This isn't. That's how our opening is, right?
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that we talked about, we've covered a little bit actually, George, you and I, was the fact that a lot of these movie studios have these heads of movie studios, and they tend to kind of bounce around a little bit. They tend to go from one studio to the next studio, and I think this is something that's been going on for a long time. It's not like a new phenomenon. I think since the film industry started, we're looking at like the 20s and 30s and 40s really is when, probably the mid 30s, when things really started revving up, because people started realizing, oh, we can make a lot of money
Hmm.
Like with Charlie Chaplin and
Right.
Buster Keaton and those guys, they people realize, oh, people do want to go see these films, and then the
Exactly.
talkies came out and all that happened, and then a machine was built,
Hmm.
early on, and we're going to talk about the early days and stuff, but it's probably been going on a little bit like that for quite some time as far as the studios are concerned. And something that was said here on the New York Times described the shuffle as the latest continuation of a long-time game of rearranging executive deck chairs, only leaving out the phrase on the Titanic. Now, of course, they're being facetious. They're saying basically that it's sort of a sinking ship.
Right.
And now, is Hollywood a sinking ship? Are the studios are sinking ships? I don't think so. I think there's a shift happening. I think that you can only go so long creating a certain narrative, that goes
Hmm.
into one direction with huge explosions and a lot of special effects and all that stuff. Because what happens is people then get destimulated, right?
Hmm.
They
Right.
suddenly now you're watching. I mean, remember when we first saw Star Wars,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Right.
oh my God, all the Star Trek movies.
Right.
It was a marvel. It was unbelievable. We couldn't, you
Right.
know what I mean? Go back now and watch Star Trek or show Star Wars to a 10-year-old who just got through watching one of the Marvel series, right?
Right. Right.
It's just a lot. There's
Yeah.
a lot of money has been invested in showing the graphic. Now, I am guilty of loving Marvel. I have my son is going to be 6 years old in a couple of months, and he loves Marvel, and so do I. So we've watched all of them, and they're great entertainment.
But let me ask you a question while you're on that. What is it about Marvel movies that you love?
I like the costumes. No, I like I I like the way that they wovened the stories together.
Right.
They weavened
The
the
like the
stories.
Marvel universe type
The
thing.
Marvel universe. You know what I mean? Like you can't watch Marvel. Like, see, somebody told me this the other day. They watched and they were lost because they didn't know something. I was like, well, there's actually, if you go online, you can type in how to watch the Marvel series.
Okay.
All the way from, even if the film was made afterwards, you still
Right.
want to watch it before.
Right. Right.
Um, like the first Marvel superhero that landed on Earth is not Tony Stark, because Tony Stark
Right.
is from Earth,
Right. Right.
but it's Captain Marvel,
Right.
right? So
Hmm.
that was supposedly 1995. She crashed into a blockbuster. So there's this kind of a series and this kind of sequence that you can follow along like a soap opera. It took you on a journey of these characters, and
Hmm.
was there silliness to them? Of course. Were the effects amazing? Yes, they were. Most of them. I don't recall one being really terrible. They got better as they went along, obviously. But when you look at that first Iron Man film, that's pretty good film. That's pretty good
Right.
effects and everything. You know what I mean?
Right.
For it to be the first Iron Man, and then it just got better from there. But that's what I enjoy about it. It is. People always talk about the story is always important. The stories are. Well, it is a story, and the story always got me. And you have this evil character. Spoiler alert if anybody has. Wait, I haven't seen all the
There's a bad guy.
28 films. But if if you look at Thanos and you look at what his purpose is to kind of, you know, shrink in to bring down the universe, or to make less people. You know what
Right.
I mean? That's kind of like a lot of things that people talk about. Maybe the conspiracy people talk about that. You know what I mean? How is he going to do that? Well, he's going to get all these rings and he's going to snap his finger, and then half the planet disappears, or half the universe, whatever. So there's this kind of thing that we can relate to a lot of it, with what's happening and stuff. And when you watch them, you can see the narrative being directed towards certain things that are happening. Even people
Hmm.
saying things, fighting their, trying to team up with the government, but the government wants one thing, and the government wants to use the Avengers against other countries,
Right.
and they want to take their power. And you can't just have all that power. You got
Right.
to give it to us, or you got to sign it off. And there that became a little bit of a struggle. So it was very fascinating to see that development in the Marvel universe. So you have that, but when I remember watching the End Game, right?
Hmm.
And I remember watching it and thinking to myself, what can they possibly do?
Right.
This was like epic, right?
Right.
This was every single character that was brought in, even for a little second, they were all there, and at the end, it's like, okay, what's next, and they did manage to kind of continue with the storyline, but it really, for me, it's still always going to be story.
Yes.
Now, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
I feel like you were trying to like
No, 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 no. I
at me.
wanted.
Like,
No, 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 no.
well,
I wanted.
what is it about Marvel?
I was just curious. Like, I know, obviously a kid's attraction to Marvel and all those types of things, but
Yeah,
I was just
I mean,
wondering for
definitely it's
yourself.
kids. It is kids, and
Mm,
there's that whole thing with Scorsese, who said it's not really cinema, right? It's entertainment, and then
yes.
he got a big flack for that, right? And everybody was like, I mean, the difference is that there's a movie, right? Those
Hmm.
are movies, and then Scorsese is making films that
Right.
are paintings, and he's very, it's story driven, but it's also very character driven.
Yes.
It's very cinematic. You
Right.
know what I mean? And there's just so many ways that you can catch Iron Man going. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
Exactly. Right.
that's it. The
Right.
Thor with his hammer. There's just so much stuff you can catch with that. You can't be too. You have to show widescreen. You got to be on green. There's got to be green screen everywhere. These guys got
Mhm.
to jump around. They got to be tied up to stuff. I mean, that's just the way it is. So it's almost like a different genre. I mean, not almost. It is a different genre, but it's almost like you can't really even compare them.
True.
You know what I mean? You can't
True.
say
True.
Goodfellas
Versus Iron
and
Man.
Iron Man.
I know.
You know what I mean? It's like, which
Right.
one do you like more? You like
Right.
Goodfellas, or you know what I mean? It's like you can't do that. So, but again, this is not a new thing, right? You can say, do you like Citizen Kane, or do you like Star Wars?
Right.
Well, those came out not that far from me. I mean, I guess 30 years from each other, but still, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
get a film from, like, get an Elvis film, like, anything from Elvis, right?
Hmm.
Those
Hmm.
films, Blue Hawaii or whatever.
Well,
Uh,
look
Viva Las
at
Vegas,
Godfather versus Star Wars. They were around the same time.
around the same time, two completely different films.
Right.
You know what I mean? And both, I think, they were nominated at that,
Yeah.
for stuff. So, and Star Wars and Godfather was a true story. It was a book written by
Right.
someone, and so was Star Wars, a
Right.
true story written by. I'm just kidding. Hey, but people at home are like, yeah, it was.
Wait
Wait,
a minute.
it's not true. It is true. So I think that when you're talking about studios, you know, what's the purpose of a big giant movie studio? It's to make movies people watch,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's
Get butts and seats.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. They have to pay the bills. They got a lot of they got a high overhead. That those. Go ahead.
No, but yeah, yeah, it's true. But again, you have to factor in the audience, right? You have to factor in the time of the audience, right? Now, just like you said, if you take Star Wars today, and you bring it to, I mean, if you take Star Wars, however long it was, 40 something years ago, and you bring it today, would it be what it was? No, it wouldn't.
I
I mean,
mean,
it might still be a good film, but it's
right,
not going to compare to these films that are today, because there's some parts of Star Wars that are still, even at how we love that movie, that are still too slow for people of today's age.
correct.
They, to me, and from just by what, and again, I'm a lay person in this. You're more of the expert in this than I am, but just as a fan of movies and stuff, they're catering to that, right? They're looking at this young generation that wants everything so fast and quick and boom and
Or
Mhm.
are they purposely creating that speed?
Meaning,
Are they catering to it because they think that that's what they all want? See, because you have to understand the power behind a movie studio, right?
mhm,
They have the power to influence a culture,
right,
right? So
right,
when Star Wars came out, everyone wanted to be Luke Skywalker. Right? Everybody
Right.
wanted to be Han Solo. Everybody was dressing up, and so they influenced
Right.
that, right? Star Wars and Star Trek, right, were influenced. Well, there's arguments on that, so I'm not even going to go
Yeah.
into Star Wars and Star Trek. Let's not go there, people. But those franchises influenced each other,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
from that came Battlestar Galactica and
Right.
other TV shows that were having to do with space. Originally, you can go back to Lost in Space,
Right.
which was in the 50s or the 60s, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
That might have influenced, that might have, I'm sure it did influence to some degree, right?
Right.
So these films do influence. The thing about it is that you have to go back to like who was the original, where was the original thought come from? Where the original idea? Original ideas are what's lacking in Hollywood.
True.
That's
Very true.
why we have so many
Very true.
remakes. They're revamping this, they're
Right.
revamping that, they're bringing back. I mean, Eddie Murphy, who I love, came back with, Coming to America 2,
Right.
which I watched and I loved it. It was
Right.
great. It was funny. He's coming up with another Beverly Hills Cop.
Mm.
He's coming back with another. I I heard, I don't know if this is true, but I heard like a Trading Places
Wow.
possibly coming back with Dan Aykroyd and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Dan
Mm.
Aykroyd? Yeah, Dan
Yeah, it was
Aykroyd.
Dan Aykroyd. Yeah.
So Hollywood is starving for original ideas. And the
Yes.
reason, and this is just my opinion, is that the studio heads are under such pressure, and I don't even blame them. They're under such pressure to keep their jobs because there's this huge machine that has to get fed. That
Right.
if you know for a fact that this Marvel film, Thor, the one that just came out, Thor goes to Hollywood.
Whatever.
I forgot the name of the
Whatever
film,
it
but
is. Yeah.
Thor, Thor on ice. Whatever it is, that if they know that that's gonna make $1 billion, you know what I mean? Because it's Thor and it's a Marvel film, they're gonna actually fund it. They're gonna push a lot of money for it. Now it's Marvel, right? Marvel is its own kind of thing. But if another film like let's say Maverick comes
Mm-hmm.
out, now they've been waiting 36 years to make Maverick,
Right.
Top Gun, right? So
Right.
anticipation for that is like humongous. So now it's the
Right.
number one, it's almost at seven. It's almost like at $700 billion, or maybe 700 million. I don't know. So
That'd
no,
be
I think it's in the billions. I don't know. It's a lot of money. It's not in the
Mm.
billions, but it'll get to the billions. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so you, that's where I think that these movie studios heads are really struggling with. You know what I mean? It's with the idea that if this next film that I put out doesn't do it, I'm losing my job because I'm the head. I'm the one that's approving these things. I'm signing these checks. I'm partnering up with these people. Now, of course, there may be other entities involved in that. Like if I have a script and this is a good script and I want to make it, it's going to cost me $50 million to make this script. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's in it? Joe Schmo. We're not making it.
Right.
Get me Denzel. Get me
Right.
Tom
Right.
Cruise.
Sure.
Get me Brad Pitt.
Sure.
If you get one of
Sure.
those guys, this is going to be made.
Right.
Now, you know what I mean? So there's that argument and there's that conversation, which I'm sure takes place all the time. Sometimes a film gets made solely on the fact that some famous actor agreed to make the film.
Right.
The film comes out and doesn't do well. Ishtar comes to mind. So you had Dustin Hoffman
Yeah.
and Warren Beatty,
Right.
two of the biggest stars of all time, come together to make a film, and you think, "Whoa, this is going to be a huge smash hit." But the script was so weak, and the writing wasn't. There was a lot of problems with it.
Right.
It just didn't work. You know what I mean? Sometimes you'll have a bad screenplay. That there's a lot of different elements in the film industry, right? I mean,
Right.
there's so many pieces. It's not like when you and I played music,
Yeah.
where we were in a band. There's 5 of us,
Mm.
right? 2 of us generally wrote the songs, right? And then then you would put a lot of the arrangements in,
Right.
and then we would put the songs together, and there it is. It's 5 guys, and here's
Yeah.
the song. You know what I mean? When you're dealing with a film, you could have 1,000 people. You'll see the credits at the end of the film.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
They're all
Exactly.
involved in that. So there's a lot at stake when somebody puts something out, and they put all their money into it. I mean, what was the film that just recently? Anyway, you gonna say something?
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, and I agree with that completely, because I mean, I see it, right? You know, my wife and I have talked about this a lot. 'Cause my wife loves to watch movies and stuff like that, and even she gets frustrated because she's like, okay, there's another remake, there's another this, and the same things you're seeing, right? It's a remake of something, and they'll do a remake of a remake at this point. It's like, it's
Oh yeah,
how
they've
many
done
times
that.
have they done that, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
then in that case, are you creating? So what happens now? You're creating a generation of film watchers, especially the younger generation, not the older folks like myself or yourself, but youngers that become so dependent on those films, that wouldn't you think that they're hurting themselves, whereas they can't make any other film except that?
Right.
Meaning, you know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
and now streaming has taken over a lot of that, right?
Right.
Because now
Yeah. I
we
mean,
we can
television. Yeah.
television, Netflix, and all these things have taken over, because and we talked about this with Rick Dugdale on the show. My daughter now is, she's 15 years old. She Marvel is blah to her now. We
Right.
watch, I watched the first Avengers. We were excited about the first Avengers because it was the first one, right? She
Yeah.
saw the other ones, but now it's not like, it's whatever. She would rather sit and, watch a Netflix show that's a little more of like a soap opera.
Right.
She would like to watch or that has the teens, or that has the, or love story, or the wolves, or whatever, those types
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
But that's more of her fascination now, because she's
Yeah. I
kind of
mean,
done with the Marvel stuff.
yeah. I mean, there's no question that Netflix, when Netflix announced, and I remember it so clearly, that they were going to go into the original content.
Right.
I was like, original content? What does that mean? What is that? We're gonna make our own. And then you're just gonna just say you're gonna do it. And I was like, why not? And I
Mhm.
thought, wow. And then Amazon originals, and then Hulu came out, and then I remember thinking, well, this is either gonna go extremely well,
Right.
or they're just gonna put out what had been on television at that point, which was reality shows,
Yeah.
because reality shows are very cheap to make,
Yep.
very cheap to put together, and low cost,
Mhm.
high viewership.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's it. But no, no substance at all.
True.
And what Netflix did, which I think Netflix has made a lot of mistakes. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. Netflix
Mhm.
is I've I've been upset with them. I've been happy with them recently. I'm a little bit more happy because they're allowing more people, freedom of speech, and letting the shows actually play,
Right.
as opposed to censoring everyone. But we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But um, I think that what they did is they opened the door to the possibility that you can make just as good a quality TV shows. And I think maybe HBO probably opened that door originally,
Yes.
first with what was the Steve Buscemi,
Oh,
Boardwalk Empire.
yes, 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 yes,
Yeah,
yes. I remember that.
Boardwalk Empire was phenomenal. Now, of
Right,
course, it was
right, right.
Martin Scorsese. It was $1 million per episode, which
Hmm.
was like kind of unheard of. It was very expensive to shoot, but it opened the door to the possibility that, you know what, we might be able to make really good stuff. Not only that, technology. Now we can stream now much
Yes.
faster.
Right.
We can shoot much cheaper. Digital film, digital, not even film, is digital. You can get away with shooting things digital and have it look really good, you
Right.
know, as opposed to 15 years ago where digital, you can say, okay, that's a digital film. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Um, and Rachel says, we want beat movies. What's that?
Upbeat movies.
Upbeat. Oh, I don't know why I missed the up. Well, I'm sorry, Rachel. We want upbeat movies. That's right. That's absolutely correct. And one of the things that I was happy about was that when you go to Netflix, there's a lot of stuff on Netflix, right? I mean, there's a ton of stuff,
Yeah.
but a lot of the shows are entertaining shows.
Hmm.
They're also shot really well.
Yeah.
They're also written extremely well.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
it's sort of like they've sort of figured out a recipe of something,
Right.
and then that kind of like screwed Hollywood up a little bit, because now you have to, not only do you have to get dressed, you got to get in your car, you got to drive, you got to pay 20 whatever it is a ticket is now, which I think you, if you go to the movies for four, it's going to cost you over $100.
Yes.
And if you get all
You get
the
the
snacks and everything,
popcorn and all that.
you're
Yeah.
in for 150 for
Yeah.
the night,
Yeah.
right? Where you can stay at home, order in,
Right.
and have your family around a nice size screen TV and watch a film or watch a show on Netflix. And it's very damaging to Hollywood. So there's another pressure that these studios have on why do you think they're remaking it? I'm surprised that they haven't remade, and I don't want to give them any ideas, but Gilligan's Island
Yeah.
and the Greatest American Hero.
Don't think that those probably have not been on the table,
I'm
because I'm
positive that they've been on
pretty
the
sure
table,
they have.
and I'm surprised they haven't done it.
But one thing that on looking at theater, going to the theater, is that Netflix will never replaces the experience of going to the theater.
It never will. But
Right.
what history has shown is that people adjust. 30, not even 30. Let's just say, when did Amazon start charging for stuff? Let's say, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, whenever Amazon started, people were like, I'm not putting my credit card in that computer. Are you crazy? Our credit card right now, with all our money, is everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's protected to a certain degree, I understand, but people will slowly get accustomed. There will be what's the word you call? They get
acclimated.
acclimated, and there's another word. They indoctrinated into the system
Right.
that they want you to be in. Netflix is something that you have to do at home.
Yeah, but you true. And I completely agree that they changed the landscape as far as that goes.
Right.
But like, for example, for me, you guys know I'm a huge Star Trek fan. The next Star Trek movie comes out in the theater. I'm not waiting for it to come out on, Blu-ray or on Netflix or on whatever. I'm going to the theater because there's an experience there that I can that you can't get at home.
Right.
In the theater with 100 people in the
I
theater.
love the theater. Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And
it's an experience.
That big now I hardly go to the theater anymore. I can't tell you the last time I went to a movie theater, but I'm the type of person that it has to be a movie like that
Right.
drives me to go to the theater. Otherwise I really don't care.
Right.
But I will go to see that because of that experience and because it's on the big screen and because you're immersed into it,
Right.
So there's always that little piece.
And that's never going to go away because,
right, exactly.
You have to, let me just, what Peter says here, he says, when times are bad, movies get lighthearted. In good times, audiences want dark. That's why they do last minute reshoots for the most part. Also, there are international audiences and censorship to consider. Censorship to consider. So yeah, that is true. And, I don't know where I mean, right now, I guess we're in a harder times, I think, because we have a lot of lighter movies coming out. But I think people, like Rachel said earlier, I think people do want upbeat movies. I think us, just as beings, as spiritual beings of creativity and want to actually explore. Yes, there are. You can't have a film without a conflict. You can't have a film without a problem. Right. You have to have something. You have to have somebody trying to kill you, or you have to have something trying to stop you from reaching some end goal, right?
Right.
And that challenge has to always be there. You know what I mean? But I think that how to get there, and how the ending, how it actually resolves itself, I think people want they want to leave there going, wow, that was scary. I didn't think they were going to make it out,
Right.
And then finally they made it out, and I think that's something that's always going to be there. The big screen, to your point, I think that definitely that's never going away because, and as a matter of fact, I heard, and I don't know if anybody's on that can actually verify this, but there are theaters being purchased. I can't remember what organization, but they're buying theaters now, big movie screen theaters again, to fill them up again, to go. So I don't remember what organization it was, but that this is happening again. The brick and mortar spaces are kind of coming back again when it comes to film.
Right.
The small movie houses are always quaint. People always like those. And the big giant, what's the IMAX things are
IMAX, yeah.
great for like
Yeah.
that experience. You know what I mean? But those are expensive. So
Yeah.
the reason that they're so expensive and the reason why it's so expensive to make a film is because you have to get a lot of people in those seats to pay for that thing.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
If you're charging $50 to sit in the chair to watch a film, then you better make that film really, really good. You know, I ain't
Right.
going there to watch Porky's 2. You know,
What's wrong with
not
Porky's too?
well in
3D.
IMAX. I saw it twice in IMAX, and I tell you, the second time was not as good. But I will say this, that if Netflix, if Amazon Prime, Hulu, or any of these organizations decide to go into the big movie business, into making actual theater,
Theater
and,
movies.
and then we're going to see some real good competition, because
Yes.
I feel like Netflix has a good, even though, like I said again, they've made a lot of mistakes.
Mm.
I canceled them and canceled them and got them back 2 or 3 times in the last whatever 10 years. But I think that they understand storytelling,
Right.
and the reason is because they have more time. You know,
Yes.
if you have 6 episodes to tell a story, that's a luxury.
Right.
You know what I mean? When you're trying to get a film, I mean, how long is Maverick? You know, over 2 hours. How long? I mean, The Irishman was a Netflix film.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it opened first in theaters, but
Right.
for like 2 weeks or something, and then it went right to Netflix.
Right.
It's over 3 hours long. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But it's brilliant because it keeps you into this story, and they have
Yeah.
more time to explore the character and stuff like that. Whereas a lot of these remakes, how can you explore these remakes? You know what I mean? It's like, well, we already know going in what's happening with Superman. We
Right.
know what's happening with Batman.
Yeah.
I know what's happening with the Marvel characters. I know Thor is gonna fight. I know he's gonna do this at one point. I also know he's gonna go like this, and the hammer's gonna go. You know what I mean? I know these things are gonna happen. I'm expecting them. I'm not gonna be surprised. I'll be entertained.
Right.
I'll be like, oh, that was pretty cool. Oh, that was cool. Oh, that was funny, right? Because then now they've added a little humor into it. But we were talking about something that reminded me of, was it the Yahoo article? Let me see. Was this the Yahoo article? What's happening is the biggest reset in Hollywood economics in the last 70 years. Okay, so that's basically what's happening. Since television arrived, the courts broke up with vertically integrated studio systems. So they broke up the studio system, you know, and now we have television creating content that's equally as quality as big feature films.
Right.
You know, and because of that, I think it's become really a challenging thing for the studios. And I'm not like defending the studios. I kind of defend them in the sense that they're so freaking big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about how it was to where it is to where it's going. That's going to be a little segment that we're going to be doing. But the studios are just massive. You know what I mean? And when we watch a film that came out and we see it and everywhere, for that one film, there's 50, 60, 100 other films that are also out.
True.
That we probably didn't see, that were in smaller theaters, that had smaller releases overseas. You know, there's a big, remember, we have a planet here, you know, and there's a lot of theaters everywhere. So a lot of times when you go to these film festivals, if you have a feature film in a film festival, it's a lot of F's in that sentence. If you have a feature film in a film festival, you're trying to go there to try to sell your film.
Yeah.
So you may sell your film to a Korean market.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll subtitle it, or you have to deliver it subtitled, and they'll pay you, and they'll sell. You know, you'll sell it to Russia, you'll sell it to whoever wants to buy the film. You know, and and then these other entities in these countries go to these festivals to buy films so they can bring them back to their studios and back to their theaters to fill up their theaters and make money.
Right.
You know what I mean? So these studios run a massive enterprise here. It's not just, you know, because I hear people, oh, the big studios, nothing but you know, and there is that, you know, but there's also the fact that they are drowning in trying to just stay afloat, because at any one crash, this one that just crashed recently, what What was the film that just came out that like tanked the Toy Story, the robot,
Oh, the yeah, actually the Lightyear
the
thing.
Lightyear thing? It tanked.
But
You
but did
why
you
did
see?
it tank?
Okay, but did you? I mean, again, I what did they do with that character? Right, like
Well, they didn't have Tim Allen. That was one.
that's number one. But they wanted to make that character the next, Marvel character,
Well, yeah,
basically.
they thought that that was going to be a
That
thing.
was gonna, well, we have Marvel's being successful. Let's take Lightyear and make him like a superhero.
You mean Disney
Uh,
or Pixar?
yeah, well, whatever.
Right.
But
Yeah.
let's make him like a superhero. Let's make him, whatever, like Batman. You know what I mean? And
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
I
I
don't
mean, look,
agree.
they have a good franchise, right? There were four Toy Stories. They were all entertaining. We watched all of them with the
Right.
kids. Um, the Buzz Lightyear character I thought was hilarious, but it was hilarious because Tim Allen was voicing it. That's
Yes.
my opinion. Tim Allen's got a funny voice, and when he did that, for those four films, alongside Tom Hanks's character,
Right.
it really worked, you know. And from what I've heard, and I haven't seen the film, so I can't really
Neither have I.
judge it, but from what I've heard from people who have seen it, was that it just didn't work anymore. It wasn't the same chemistry that he had. It was a different storyline, which I got, and I know that there was some woke stuff that people actually were like,
Of course.
like, oh, you're really in this now. You're gonna bring that. I get that
Yeah.
part as well, but the overall thing, I think it just did not work. Because I think you changed the idea. You had these kids grow up watching Toy Story, hearing Tim Allen do this voice for, I mean, how long? 15 years, 20 years. I don't remember when the first Toy Story came out, but it was a long time ago. So these kids that are now in their 20s
Right.
they probably have kids of their own, bringing their kids to see it, but their kids have watched all of them. Now they're all excited. Little Buzz coming out, and then Buzz comes out and it's like,
But
this
from
is
what
not
I
right.
from what I understand now, Tim Allen doing that character is always going to appeal to kids because even in his delivery,
That's my
he's
point.
going to appeal to the kid. Now, when you put somebody different in there, but it's not just putting somebody different in there. It's also
Well, it was a yeah,
what you're doing with the character.
right.
What are you doing with, what I'm saying? You're completely changing. It's like, again, it's like how many times where you, except for maybe the Marvel, but how many times where you do a film and then you do part two is never as good as part one, right? Very few times.
Very rarely.
When
I
you
mean, The
go into three and four,
Godfather is the
when you
only
go
one.
into three and four, you're losing money at this point
Right,
because, right,
right,
very few movies have actually
right.
succeeded.
You're
Maybe
looking to sell it really quickly to a market,
right,
just to make a little bit of money
yeah,
on the back end, but
yeah,
definitely not on, like the worst being the Superman films, the early ones with Christopher Reeves. The first Superman film, fantastic. I love
hmm
Christopher Reeves. The second one, I enjoyed it.
right.
You had not Khan. That's not it.
Khan was in Superman.
What was his name? Zola.
Oh, you're talking about
What was his name?
uh
It's a
the
great
the
character, man.
the three you talking
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
no, now I forgot his name.
Zogan or something like. I can't remember. But anyway,
Zoltan.
Zoltan. Um,
Somebody knows that. Can you put that up, please?
tryptophan. I'm just making stuff up now. Eterol. Was it
Prolia.
Eterol? Lithium, and Eterol. I can't remember what the thing was, but anyway,
General Zod.
Zod, great film.
Yes.
And then 3, 4. I don't even know if they came up with a 5, but just really that was
Yeah.
just now The Godfather 1 and 2, fantastic films,
Right.
both. So you can strike twice if you do it the right way and fast enough that people still remember.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of course, the Tom Cruise thing is 36 years in the making, but that's different. That's Tom Cruise, and that's a different thing. And that also had a really uplifting story as well.
Right.
To Rachel's point. The Minions film that came out recently also did really well.
Mm-hmm.
Also has a good story. Let's just look at some of the top films here. because we're getting off track. I knew this was going to happen, George. I told you this was going to be one of our.
John, how dare you even have an
How
agenda
dare
for this?
you get off track? Number one is Nope. Everybody's been looking forward to this film. I think this, Keenan. I think is what's his name? Key and Peele. No, what's his name?
No, Jordan Peele.
Jordan Peele. Fantastic. He's great. Thor, Love and
Love and
Thunder.
Thunder.
Love and Thunder. I mean,
My wife said it was horrible.
yeah, I know. I heard it was pretty bad, but people were looking forward to it, and people like the guy Chris. He's pretty cool actually in real life. I've seen a lot of his stuff. He's really cool. The Minions doing really well. Again, positive stuff. Where the Craw? What does that say?
Where the Crawdads Sing.
I can barely see this actually. I'm sorry if anybody can see it. Top Gun, Elvis, Paws of Fury. Is that the Chuck Norris movie?
Cartoon.
The Black Phone. That has to do about the BlackBerry. I think that's the history of the BlackBerry. Jurassic World. I don't know what that's about. Miss Harris Goes to Paris. That rhymes, so that's probably how that film got made. Hey, Miss Harris Goes to Paris. That kind of rhymes. Let's have a film. I don't know what that film is, but that seemed more interesting to me than anything else on there. I like the Maverick. I like the Minions film. So the studios are putting out stuff and making a lot of money. You saw those numbers there: 200 million, 300 million, 600 million for Maverick. But like I was saying before, the originality is still where things are struggling. So let's go quickly because we're 15 minutes left.
It's our show. We can do whatever we want.
That's true, right? We can. This is our world. And by the way, if you're out there, we really appreciate you listening to us chat, and we appreciate the
comments. Absolutely,
comments and
join the discussion
and join in, and you can tell us to go home because I'm already home, and so is George. But you can tell us anything, any suggestions. So all right, we want to do something real quickly called How It Was, Where It Is, Where It's Going. These are all opinions, obviously, and this is about the film industry, where it was or how it was. So in the 40s, movie studios would sign an artist to a contract. Now there was MGM, there was Warner Brothers, there was Paramount, right? And there was another one. There was smaller ones that were run by Desilu. Remember Desilu Productions? There was the one with what's his name? Charlie Chaplin started. All these were film companies, and they all put out these projects. But you would sign a person, and that actor or actress could not do any other film unless it was with your studio. Now, sometimes a studio would lend out someone. Like a good example is MGM had this Wizard of Oz movie they wanted to make, right? But they wanted Shirley Temple. Now, Shirley Temple was the biggest child star at the time, but she was signed to another studio. I don't remember if it was a Paramount. I don't know which one, but she was signed to another one. So they wanted to bring her over. They couldn't work out the deal. They got Judy Garland, who was already signed at MGM. And, of course, the rest is history, right? So this is what happened back in those days. Now, another thing that they did was whenever you would sign an artist, that artist now went to school. They learned dialect. Because remember, when the talkies came on, I think we talked about this with Rick Dugdale, the director, last show, because the talkies came in, and then all these actors that were, in the silent era, their voices didn't match their face. So if you had a guy who was like swag, he's like, Maria, te quiero mucho, whatever it was. And that became a huge problem. Same thing with the women. Women's voices just didn't match what they looked like, on the screen. So a lot of these actors and actresses had to go to dialect classes. They had to take dance. They had to take acting classes. They had to take singing classes. You had to know how to sing, dance, and act. And sometimes they were right. Sometimes they were wrong. An example is the story about Fred Astaire, right? You know,
Mhm.
his whole, when he got his report card, right?
Mhm.
His report card, and this is a story that film people are gonna go like, yeah, we know that already. But if you're watching this and you don't know, but his report card was can't sing, can't act, can dance a little.
A little bit.
That's
Yeah.
what it wrote. That's what they wrote for him, right? He obviously went on to become one of the biggest stars uh, ever. So this is how it was, you know. So these studios were competing with one another.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
It's a good thing. Why do you think when you go to a mall, you have J.C. Penney's right next to Macy's, right? Why do when you go somewhere and you look at, and you go to a CVS, why across the street there's a Walgreens? If you look at all these places, they all line up next to each other. Why are there three banks, four banks next to each other? When you go to New York City, Manhattan, you'll see the corners. There's four banks. Why? Because competition is a good thing. So
Nail
these
salons.
studios, what was that?
Nail salons.
Right? Why do you have Maria's nail salon and Chiquilitas? No, but why? You know, all these
Yeah.
nail salons. Yeah, that's true. You know, why are they close to each other? Bodegas in the Bronx. Remember?
Uh-huh.
You go to
Or
one block.
Bogadas.
Yeah, you got like four. Yeah, or Bogadas in the Bronx. You got like 4 or 5 Bogadas next to each other. You know what I mean? Um, you know, and that's what happens. So, you know, competition is good, and these studios made a lot of money. You know, and
Right.
they paid their actors, but they only paid them based on their work that they did.
Hmm.
They didn't take into account that somebody like Cary Grant was going to become so famous
Right.
that he can demand whatever he wants.
Right.
Judy Garland,
Right.
Mickey Rooney, who at one time was the biggest star in the world. He used
Right.
to always say, the biggest
Yeah.
star in the world. You know, and this became the actors and the stars became more empowered, right?
Hmm.
That
Yes.
kind of broke up things a little bit because now it's like, well, I don't want to work on this with you. I want to go to MGM now. I'm going to go to
Right.
Paramount, and they couldn't hold them anymore. The contracts and all that stuff fell apart. So now you don't have that anymore, right? Now
Right.
the studios are kind of, you know, you don't get signed to a studio, you get signed to an agent or a casting person or something, right? So that's how it was. Do you have anything to add
No,
to
no,
that?
I completely, and it makes sense. And actually, it's interesting that you say that because you can kind of relate that to all the entertainment industries or all the industries that generate revenue. Sports is like that, right?
That's a good point.
The sports, if you
That's a
look
good
at the
point.
old sports stars, it was the same type of deal, right?
Yeah,
And, you know, the old, just look at baseball, for example. The old baseball guys used to play ball, and they actually had a regular job. They didn't
they
have
have
all these
regular work.
huge things, blah blah blah. Then what happened? They became so huge that they got so empowered that they had to demand these contracts
Right.
that were, huge. And then it
And
was like,
let's,
yeah,
yeah, no, I'm sorry, but let's
but
talk why they got huge, right?
right,
Because there was interest.
right. Well,
People
yes.
went. People
Well,
want to go see Cary Grant
yeah.
and Humphrey Bogart and
Well,
those guys.
exactly. It's the same thing. People want to see this sports star versus that sports star, and they're putting butts in the seats. So obviously, their market value
Right.
went up, right? The actor versus the baseball player. It's the same deal,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
And
So,
you had dare I say the word diversity, but you had diversity in those old films where there was a lot of typecasting, I guess you could say, and then it's still probably, I'm not probably, I know it still happens today,
right,
but you'll have like the leading man,
right,
which is Cary Grant.
yeah,
Now people will look at Jimmy Stewart and say like, well, he wasn't really a leading man. Well, he was a leading man in a lot of films. But he won his only Academy Award was for supporting
hmm,
in the Philadelphia Story, 1939. But you have to also understand that he was in the film with Cary Grant, so
right,
obviously he wasn't. So there
true,
was this. Then there was the Marilyn Monroe,
hmm,
Katharine Hepburn, right?
right,
Audrey Hepburn, and you had these beautiful, beautiful stars, Rita Hayworth, right? But then you also had Judy Garland, right? Judy Garland wasn't the bombshell. She was a character actress. She was pretty. She could
hmm,
sing, she could dance, and she can act,
right,
right? So there was this idea where you can have all these different diversities of performers in these films, right?
right,
Whereas today, if you look at every single one of the Avengers, well, they're all like the most incredibly looking people, that you can put in a room. They're all just good looking people, right? I mean,
Right.
it's not that maybe Rocket, you know, he's this he's the whatever you call him. Yeah, so I mean, I think that was the way that it was set up was so it can work within that system
Hmm.
because remember they were broken up. So they needed we need a leading man, we need a
Right.
leading female, we need a leading blonde man, we need a leading blonde female, we need a funny short guy, we need a funny good looking tall guy. There's your Danny Kaye.
Yeah.
There's your, you know what I mean? I can't remember his name, but all these guys, you know what I mean? So the studios had to do that kind of casting, right? So that's the way it was
Hmm.
in the 40s and the 50s, and then sort of around the 60s. And I think it probably started breaking up with Elvis.
Hmm.
Elvis became such a powerhouse in
Yeah.
film, even though he wasn't like known for his acting. If you look at his first three films, Jailhouse Rock and Love Me Tender, were really good films.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, were really
Hmm.
good films. He actually did a really good job in those films.
Hmm.
He was just as good as anybody at that point. You know what I mean? Of course, later on, they're like, "Oh, you got to have you sing a song.
Right.
You're a
Right.
dishwasher who sings. You're a mechanic who sings. You're this, that," and then that kind of. But that star power that he had during those '50s films kind of like shook things up a little bit in the studios
And
because it's like
Sinatra too. People
and
like Sinatra.
Sinatra. Oh my
Yes.
God, yeah, Sinatra, of course. And yeah, you can we could do a whole show on Sinatra
Hmm.
and his impact in the world, right?
Hmm.
Um, maybe we should do that one day. So I'm looking at the time, but then I'm thinking it's just you and I, George. So let's just have a conversation. If people are here, they're here.
Yeah. Why not?
We appreciate you guys hanging out. Really, this is a conversation that George and I think that moving forward, we're going to be doing these and really trying to dissect some of the things that we're passionate about. And music is one of them. Obviously, film, health, and nutrition. These are all things that we really want to break down and just get your viewpoints on it. And if you have any viewpoints on this after the fact or now live, please just let us know. We'd love to
Absolutely.
hear it. So that's how it was, how it is now, right? We're going to go to what is,
Hmm.
where it's at right now. Um, where do you think it is right now? Let me throw it to you.
Yeah. Well, it's again, it's not like that.
Right.
No, I mean I couldn't even say. It's just so the actor, the actress, to me has the ultimate power in everything. But and the other thing is this: one of the things that you said was like back then they had to, and this is one of the things that I really respect about those times is that you said that they had to study.
They had
They
to.
had to study. They had to know how
They
to
were
do this.
basically being signed to a contract almost like a university.
Exactly. They had to be and if they didn't have that, they had to learn how to do this. Okay. Obviously,
You go to tap, you go to ballet.
right.
I have tap at 9 a.m. I have a it was that was you were basically in school, but you were
Yeah.
signed, performer,
Yeah.
which I think
Now
is
it
great.
what?
I think is a great idea. I
I
mean, I
do.
think that
I
especially if you
absolutely think
run the
so.
studio properly and you respect them and you're paying accordingly, you know what I mean? I think it's a cool thing.
Well, yeah, but now you don't need any of that now.
No,
You can have the face and the name and you're done.
basically.
That's
Yeah. The reason I think also that system wouldn't work today is because greed.
too much money involved.
Eh, Too much what?
Too much money involved.
Oh, I don't know. I thought you said too much Binny Bop. It was like a
Well,
word.
that too.
There's too much Binny Bop in the world. How are you gonna get that with so much Binny Bop going around? So with so much greed, you want to get the most out of someone for the least
For the
amount.
least amount of yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yes.
unfortunately, this is something that just humanity is just people just fall into this trap. And I think it has to do with the fact that some of these companies, I don't even know, but they're publicly traded companies, like
Mhm.
Disney is and Netflix and all these guys. They're stock companies. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, how does anyone make more money if you buy a stock this year from next year.
Right.
You have to sell more of the
Right.
stuff,
Yes.
whatever it is, whether it
Yes.
be drugs, right, the pharmaceutical companies, whether it be the food industry, whether it be the film industry, the music industry. Well, you have to sell more of that stuff. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
So I think what's happened is that it's gone. We've lost sight of structure and structure in their small film studios that are doing much better work than the large studios, but they don't have as much money,
Right.
right? So I'll give you an example is like Woody Allen films, right? Woody Allen, for the 50 years that he's been making films, takes no, they pay him the money.
Hmm.
He goes, makes a film,
Hmm.
he delivers it.
Right.
No one says, change this. No one says, I want you to cast this actor for your next film. No one can tell him anything. And he's been doing that for 50 years because
Right.
his first film was What's a Pussycat, which
Hmm.
he wrote, and
Right.
they came in and destroyed it. And he vowed never to make a movie again.
Right.
So when they came back, they said, well, what do you need for you to make a movie? He said, put $2 million in a paper bag, hand it to me, and I will hand you a film. And they were like, fine. And that's what they did from day one, And so he makes films. The actors in his films don't make what
They don't make a
actors,
lot. Right.
you know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
These actors, they'll make scale.
Yeah.
Scale is what a union person would make at the highest level. So if you get like an Alec Baldwin
Right.
who's been on in his films, you get a DiCaprio who's been in a lot of his films, Johansson even though Johansson is like the highest paid person actor on the planet, and she's great, and I love her, I love her a lot. Um, Still, she gets scale.
Isn't Spike Lee similar to that,
Um, Spike
or at
Lee
least maybe early on?
early on, I think, but Spike Lee is I love Spike Lee. He does his film. Nobody
Right.
messes with Spike Lee's films.
Right.
I don't know how the pay structure works, and I don't know about what happens in that part. But Spike Lee can can do whatever Spike Lee wants to do because he's
True.
so good. You know what I
True.
mean? So is I mean, these guys are just great at what they do. And, when you have smart people above that say, well, I'm going to invest in a Woody Allen film, I'm going to invest in a Spike Lee film, it's almost like a no-brainer. Well, yeah, of course you're going to do that. You're going to make your money back. You're not
Exactly.
going to make $100 million back. If you're in nobody who's investing in like Marvel, like somebody coming up to you goes, listen, I got an idea. Thor, for the love of
Love.
all that money in the world, or Thor goes to Vegas, um, and somebody's gonna be like, hey, that is something that I want to invest in.
Listen,
Nobody's
somebody.
gonna do that.
Listen, somebody said Jason Takes Manhattan, and put Jason Friday the 13th in Manhattan.
My
Somebody
God,
thought about that.
that was a real film,
That
wasn't
was
it?
a film. Yeah, that was a real film.
Yeah, I've never seen any of those films, but was that a Friday the 13th?
Yes.
I always get Jason and Mike Myers confused.
Yeah. Michael Myers. Yeah.
Michael
Yeah. He
Myers.
was in the middle of Times Square, like walking around with a hockey mask.
The thing is that I've been in Manhattan and I've seen that numerous times growing up there.
That's just That's just a Saturday night
never
in
strange.
Manhattan.
Yeah, it was just like it was Thursday afternoon.
But yeah, no, but I agree with you. I mean, the way it is now, yeah, and you're right. At the end of the day, the way it is now is it's your. But at the end of the day, again, the greed has permeated every industry.
Yeah, that's what I'm also that I was getting to that where it's not just there, it's also whatever. This is like the sad part is whatever whatever a group of men find out, and I say men, and I'm sorry that I said men. If any women are offended and you're corrupted, I apologize. But whenever you get a lot of group of people together, I don't know why they want to be involved in that group. You would get the idea, it's not even like man is basically good. They want to do good work. They want to, but the problem lies in the fact that there's pressures from the outside. This is why these jobs in these big corporations, they lose so much sight of things because there's so much pressure in making money. Their
Yes.
job relies on making money.
Yes.
So they're going to cut corners. They're going to find a way to kind of get a little bit of publicity, even,
Yeah.
like, okay, I need you to go out and get into a bar fight, not a
Right.
real one. We're going to
Right.
send the guy over, and then he's going to go over and cover it. He's
Right.
going to get some pictures of you bloodied, and then
Right.
we're going to put it on the news. Then when the film comes out, it'll be huge. You think that hasn't been done?
Of
Of
course.
course it's been done. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it gets people in the seat. People are like, oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole Johnny Depp thing, he's getting like, I heard, I don't know if it's already a signed deal, but I heard like $300 million to the next couple more um, pirate movies. You know what I mean? Which I think is great. I like those movies. They're entertaining. You know what I mean? Um, where else can we go in? Man, we have so much more to cover here. I'm willing to just go on and do a little more if you are.
Let's do it.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
So
I'm good.
here, welcome to the second half of Counterparts, ladies and gentlemen.
It's gonna be like a
And
Joe Rogan podcast, like 3
yeah,
hours.
and this is Counterparts. We're talking moving pictures. Um, I think it's important that we talk about this next thing because it's something that concerns me as a writer, and I did a short film. I've done short films called Stabbed. I don't know if you've ever seen Stabbed. Have you ever seen Stabbed? I'm gonna
No, I
send
don't
it
think
to you.
I don't think I saw that one.
I'm gonna send it to you. So
Yes.
it's a short film, and I can't give away the ending, but the ending was something that I took a risk on. Was that I thought, I wonder if this is, you know, very mild in today's with today's whatever ideologies or viewpoints or whatever you want to call them. But the way the world thinks today, movies should be is that everything needs to please everyone.
Yes.
Everyone needs to be happy. Let me just say one thing here for the record, George, and this is something you can cut out and share if you'd like. Don't ever label me Latinx. Don't ever put an X behind what I am. I'm a Puerto Rican man born and raised in the South Bronx, struggled, worked my way out of there, managed to have a wife and kids and make some money and make films and music and all that stuff. I'm not going to be brought down to a simple X because to please anyone. Now, that may be a little bit, but the reason I say that is because in film, everyone has to be satisfied. So now I heard an interview with someone with this new film coming out, the Black Panther, Wakanda's Revenge or Wakanda's something, um, the For the Love of Wakanda, whatever it's called. But you know, and I heard someone talk about that. That the film is going to really open up the Latinx community, and I was like, man, you had such a great film with Black Panther. Black Panther was a great film, and we tragically lost what was his name?
Oh,
Chadwick.
Chadwick. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just tragic. The guy, he's a great actor, great at that gig, and he kind of understood the importance of what he was.
Right.
And I feel that this, just watching that one interview, and I don't know how the film is. It may be fine, and I apologize if anybody's offended. No, I'm not apologizing. Actually, I'm sorry. I don't know why I apologize. See, but you see what I'm saying? Why did I just go there?
That's John Henry Soto at hotmail.com. If you want to
And
write
Juno
to
at AOL. No, you know,
him.
but here's the thing. Like, I just said something that I really believe in. Why do I have to apologize for that? And I don't have to apologize for it, but it's because this culture has been. Again, everyone, this is the second half of our show. It takes a turn.
This is the
If you
censored or
manage to
uncensored.
stick around this long,
But you but one thing you hit, and because it's not only film, television is the same way.
oh,
Okay.
yeah,
If you look at these shows, they're trying to please everybody. Everybody's got, they have to hit the certain topics. Certain people have to be in there. It has to be that way, whether it's relevant or not. It has to be done. Why? Because you get, what was it that happened to, what was it, West Side Story? I think it was the one that got criticized, right?
Yep.
Didn't they get criticized because they didn't have they didn't have certain people
Certain
in there,
amount
right?
in
Or
there, yeah.
certain people weren't represented in
People are
that movie.
forgetting that the original
Original ones,
had
they weren't,
Natalie Wood, who's
who was not
nothing.
Latin
Some
or
white chick.
Latinx.
Yeah, she wasn't even Latin at all.
Exactly. But and
Rita
it's this.
Moreno, everyone, Puerto Rican,
Exactly.
Academy
But
Award.
it's this thing, and it goes back to the same thing, kind of what you talked about before. It goes to the pressure, right? The pressure, but now the pressure is coming from a different direction. Instead of the top, it's coming from the societal pressure, the whatever you want, because you have to do what?
Small fraction.
Yeah, small fraction, but it's still a fraction that's
Makes noise.
they are completely afraid of.
Correct. Because they make noise.
They make noise. Right.
They make noise. But, I don't even know how much noise they make. I mean, I think that there's. All right, let's break away for this for a second, because this is a much deeper topic that we're going into, right? We're talking about films here, right? And television and TV shows and writing.
It's relevant to the direction.
It is relevant, and this is what I'm going to say is relevant. But we look at people like Mel Brooks. We look at people like Norman Lear. We look at writers like I can't think of his name now, but we look at writers that pushed the envelope, and this it's been going on for a very long time, right? This is not Oscar Wilde was pushing the envelope. Plato, if you ever read the old Greek philosopher Plato, you'd be shocked.
Yes.
At what he says.
Yes.
You'd be shocked if you read the Bible.
Right.
The Bible has shocking things in there. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that you can really, say like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? Should it exist? Absolutely. Absolutely, it should exist. It's tragic that you look at something like Blazing Saddles, Mel Brooks, and today would not be able to show its face anywhere.
Right.
And, because it would not happen. Basically,
of course not.
It would just not happen.
But the whole premise of, when you go back to Plato, Socrates, all these guys, the whole point of their whole dynamic was the differences in opinion. It was them questioning each other.
Right. And it was the exploration of humanity.
Exactly.
It was the questioning of everything.
Right.
It was also pushing the envelope.
Yes.
See what people will bring back.
Yes.
Give me something back that's going to challenge me.
Yes.
Don't make me look at something going, oh, that's nice. Oh, that's so great. They're all equal. They're all right there. They're not. No. They're not. I mean, people say, well, we're all equal. Well, and I talked about this earlier I wrote a blog earlier today, and I did a video on the blog. We are not equal in many things. We're equal in human rights. We all have, right? God-given human rights to breathe, to eat, to walk, to create, to expand the family unit. All those things were given to us by God, and that we are equal in that respect. I am a short man. I like basketball. I cannot play basketball professionally. I'm not equal to someone who's tall and can play basketball, even if our skill level is the same. And George, we grew up together. You knew I could play basketball, right? For a little guy, I was a decent basketball player. Could I get to the NBA? No, I knew I was not going to get to the NBA. First of all, I didn't want to get to the NBA, but I knew that there was no possibility to get to the NBA. You know what I mean? So there's physical stuff, physical things that we're not equal on, right? Okay, that's fine. Education-wise, are we equal? Are we all equal education-wise? Are we? It's impossible. No. We can't. No. First of all, I didn't like school, so that right there takes me out of the mix.
Right.
So this whole thing of equality doesn't really exist. Everyone is different. Everyone brings something beautiful to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it interesting, is the fact that we are different.
Right.
But When you force
Correct.
the difference, that's unnatural.
Right.
That is an unnatural thing. When you force it, you say, we need to have this because we need to have that, because diversity is this, and because of that. Those arguments are not good enough to make any project successful. And history has shown that, because there's been so many failures of so many of these projects that have been forced. They force feed you a narrative that you have to either like, and if you don't like it, then you are wrong and you're bashed and you're called names and all that stuff. And it's really damaging our whole lives here. I mean, what happened to the 60s when these guys were protesting? We were fighting against big government, and in the 60s. I mean, you and I were too young to be 60s people, but I love the music from there. And you look at Crosby, Stills and Nash, and you look at Bob Dylan and Neil Young and all these guys that were fighting all these oppression,
Right.
real oppression.
Right.
The kind of oppression that Martin Luther King was fighting.
Right.
That's real oppression. Fighting a film because they don't have a Latinx, it's not oppression. It's not oppression, especially when it's coming from somebody who's on their laptop who wants to bash capitalism and is drinking a $6 Starbucks.
But the but the point is that even in film, I see it. Okay, like when I look at a film and I see, okay, this person was represented. This person's in there. I know why they're in there. They're not.
It's so obvious.
It's so obvious. It's not like
obvious.
It's like it's so different than Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry in the 60s, go back to Star Trek, right? He included everyone in there. He was an all-inclusive guy before all-inclusive was even a thing.
And he was pushing for that because he thought that was a different reason. It was because it wasn't allowed.
It wasn't allowed. And what did he do? He punched through that wall and he said, "No, I'm doing this." He took the biggest risk of anyone in the 60s at that time.
To be a black woman.
Exactly.
I want the science officer to be a Vulcan.
Not only that, even before that, in the first pilot, the number one was a woman.
That's right.
Who did that?
That's right.
Who did that? You know what I'm saying?
And we're talking about the 60s.
And we're talking about the 60s, but now when you look at it, it's because I have to put the person in. I have to represent this. I have to. And you just see it and you're like, yeah, you know where this is going. Right. Matter of fact, my wife and I watch these certain television shows and we can see it coming.
Yeah.
And it's like we look at each other and we already know. Yeah, we know where this is going. We know who's going to be in there. We know which two are going to match up. We know it's already there.
And it's not to say that that's not a thing.
Right? Of course, it's a thing.
But it from being at my age and our age, we've seen enough films and enough TV shows to know when it's being forced,
right,
and when it's a natural thing.
Exactly.
I'll give you an example. Is All in the Family, one of the greatest shows of all time.
Oh my God, I love that show.
How much racism was on that show?
Yes.
Right? It was blatant, right?
Yes.
And not just from Archie Bunker.
Right.
George Jefferson was a racist.
Right.
Right?
He was a racist. He was. Yes, he was.
Clearly. And then you had the soft, the very, very, very liberal Mike.
Mike. Yeah.
Who Mike really, I remember the scene with Lamont when Mike was trying to tell Lamont about his people and how they were being oppressed.
Right.
And Lamont was like, yeah, oh, so you know how it's like.
Yeah.
You know what it's like. And he's like, no, I don't know what it's like. He goes, oh, so you're fighting for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was such a pivotal moment in that series because it kind of shows that, like, listen, man, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Jesse Jackson, you can go back to, Dinkins, who did a lot of great things, things for Jackie Robinson, Jesse Owens, Muhammad Ali. There have been a lot of people to actually break that barrier, and that barrier is weak. It's as weak as it's ever been now, but it gets strengthened by this whole thing. And why don't we just make films? You know what I mean? Like I casted. Somebody brought this up to me. I casted somebody, and he was black. I didn't. It literally, George, I swear to you, that it did not, it didn't come into play as to why I wanted him. He was a guy I met on a film set. He was good. And I was like, hey, I'm writing something. You want to be in it? He was like, yeah. At the time when I asked him, I didn't even know what I was writing. I just knew I wanted him in something.
Right.
I went and I wrote something and he was in it and we shot it and it's all done. Right. There was no, okay, now I have to have this in here because I have to make a, you know what I mean? I didn't think about that. So I just want it to be clear that when that decision gets made, it's very obvious and you're not doing anything that's groundbreaking. I'm sorry.
No,
It's
I agree.
just very obvious. And it's actually, you know what? It's kind of boring.
I agree.
It's kind of boring,
I agree.
and it just hasn't been, it just hasn't worked. So being offended is the last thing I'm going to talk about today, unless you have something else. Being offended in film, being offended on TV shows, being offended with music, being offended with statements, being offended politically, whatever it is now, is being canceled at grand scale. I don't know if you've been on the internet lately, but if you've been offended, there's a chance that there's somebody giving you the middle finger and telling you, too bad.
Right.
Everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people are now actually coming out and saying, if you're offended, you might not want to be here, including Netflix, right? As employees, we support the principle that Netflix offers a diversity of stories, even if we find some titles counter to our own personal values. Depending on your role, you may need to work on titles you perceive to be harmful. If you find it hard, I can't remember the rest, but if you find it hard to be here, Netflix may not be the place for you. And that's okay. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to work somewhere where I just don't feel that I believe in their values. Right? I'm not going to go there and force myself to be in there and be like, hey, you guys got to do it my way. No, I'm just going to not work there. I'm going to leave because I don't want to be part of that. You know what I mean? But this whole idea of I can never be offended. It's arrogant and it needs to go away, and it is going away. And I'm happy to say that even some of these platforms have been a little bit, not much, but a little bit more lenient on the fact that you can say things, because a lot of things, you and I, George, we talk off camera, obviously. We talk a lot about stuff that's coming out, that's been publicized, mainstream media stuff that's huge right now, that's massive, you know what I mean? It's all, a lot of stuff is coming out, and those that were fighting it kind of have to eat crow, Now, it's not nice to rub it in their face and say, I told you so, or whatever. But at the same time, it's sort of like, you can't be offended anymore.
No.
You can't be offended if somebody says, I disagree with that, because you think that you're right, because you may not be right.
Exactly. And again, this goes back to, this goes to a couple of things, a couple of points: personal responsibility, personal choice. Again, going back to the Norman Lears of the world, the Mel Brookses of the world, okay? When All in the Family was on, first of all, Norman Lear, the whole point of Archie Bunker was making a point
about how racism was
about
terrible.
how racism is, and he was making a point
and
about
how it makes no sense.
Exactly. That's the point of All in the Family.
But it also made some other points about how it goes both ways.
Correct.
That to me was the most fascinating thing about the show.
Yeah. Now you can't look, so of course the person's going to go back to that, and the offended person's going to go back to that. Just look at it at the face value without digging deep into what the actual message was and say, oh, you can't. We have to cancel All in the Family. You got to get rid of all that stuff. Okay.
Right. I'm surprised they haven't yet.
I know. I'm surprised. Not only Mel Brooks, George Carlin, and Norman Lear stuff. Yeah. Because all three of those.
Let's go Eddie Murphy. Let's go Richard Pryor.
Right.
Let's go Freddie Prinze.
But the problem is, again, in this day and age, the idea of personal choice and personal responsibility for what you are consuming or for a while anyway, went out the window. Instead of you saying, if you don't like it, you change the channel. If you didn't like what Howard Stern was changing, you're saying you change the channel. Right. You didn't like All in the Family, you change the channel. You didn't, if it offended you, okay, well then you go somewhere else. There's so many other places you can go, especially now with the internet and all this stuff, right? but it's that personal responsibility that people need to take.
Yeah.
You know,
And Howard Stern is a good example because Howard Stern is one of these guys that was fired a lot of times
right?
for stuff because of offending people.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, and I I'm sorry to say, but Howard won.
Yeah.
Howard won. He's been
Yep.
on the air for whatever 40 something years now.
Yep. Yep.
He's still going strong, not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think that that's one of the examples that people can look at. Although I don't follow his stuff now, and I don't believe a lot of the stuff that he currently go. I never really followed Howard that much because of the sex stuff. Like he
Right.
was
Right.
very into the porn stars and into all this stuff, and I was not really into that because I didn't find it entertaining. I found entertaining because he was funny.
He was funny. Yeah.
He was funny. That part of it was just more like shock value, whatever, which I didn't think it was that good. But does he have the right if he has an audience to do that? Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. You know what's the frustrating part is that everyone has a right to
Of
communicate,
course.
whether
Of
you like
course.
them or not.
Of course.
And it's
Absolutely.
like what Richie Gervais says. Like how arrogant is someone to think that they can go their whole lives without ever being offended?
Hey,
How
look at that.
arrogant are you
Look at
that
that.
you think you have the right to go your whole life without being offended? I mean, who are you? Where did that come from? It's got to be something that's been indoctrinated into younger people because those
Right.
are the most. You don't see people our age like protesting.
Yeah.
It's usually younger people, but um, I think our show took a different turn.
It started out
We started off just about
with this whole agenda, and
whole
John just
agenda,
threw it out the
this whole
window.
thing.
But I was good. I
It
think
was
it
funny
was.
because when I started, I did think about a lot of these things, and I said if I had the opportunity to say it, I am going to say things. This isn't, uh, this isn't a knock on anyone's values or what anyone thinks. This is to say that you have to allow others to be.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah.
You have to allow others to be.
Yes.
And if I write a film with just tall white men, that's my film. If I write a film I wrote a film called Nelson's Women. It's one man, 5 women. Now, are men going to be protesting that I only had 5 women? How dare them? Or can I even call them women? You know what I mean? So there's a lot, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things that people are going to do that unfortunately you're going to have to learn. I'm talking to, if you're watching this, you're going to have to learn how to stomach it, change the channel. Because everyone still loves you. Nobody hates you. But you do have to let others be. Let others create their own destiny. And let adults make their decisions on whether they agree or disagree.
Right.
Social media shouldn't make the judgment on whether somebody agrees or disagrees. They shouldn't protect us. We're not, we've made it this far on this planet through wars and through famine and through diseases and through, all the stuff that has happened throughout our lives. You know what I mean? Cop Rock. Remember Cop Rock?
Made it through Copper.
We've been through a lot, and we've survived. We don't need the platforms to protect us. You know what I mean? We're fine. Let things fall. People can make their own decisions. If they go, oh, that's dumb, I don't like that, change it. That's it. And that's where I'm going to end my film rant. Our film rant. We kind of went off into, I think, important topics. But
Yes.
this is the longest show we've ever done, everyone. I think. Is it an hour? No, we might have done one this long before. I don't know.
Maybe in the Star Trek time.
Yeah. I think that it's a much better platform to be able to talk a little bit longer. To do to say one day, we're going to do a 2-hour show tomorrow.
Mhm.
If you guys want to come in, it's 2 hours, so there's going to be a lot. You can come in, leave, come back later, and
Yep.
we'll still be there on this topic and stuff. So All right, folks, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode. This was a long one. If you're still here, God bless you. By the way, if you're still here, email me at johnhenrysoto@protonmail.com. Now, it has to be within the next 1 hour because then a year from now, people will still be messaging me. So today is July 26, 2022, and the time is 8:30 p.m. Central, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you email me within the next 1 hour, if you're still here, I'm going to send you a
Naked picture.
$25. I'm going to send you a $25 gift certificate for an Amazon thing. If
Can
you're
I
still
email you?
here,
Oh.
you have 1 hour from right this second, from 8:30 p.m. to Eastern Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time if you're on the East Coast. Um, $25 right
It's a
now.
good
I'm
deal.
curious.
I
I'm
like that.
curious to see. You have
1 hour.
1 hour. Okay. So, all right. Want to thank everybody. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you all next week. We will be back live again next week, 7 p.m. Central, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for George Batista, John Henry Soto, and all of us here at Counterparts. Take care. And as always,